All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego, very sunny actually today. And I am delighted to be joined by Shannon Lucas, who is up in lovely Boulder, Colorado. How are you doing, Shannon?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, John.
And Shannon is the co-founder and co-CEO of Catalyst Constellations, over 20 years in startups, ventures, corporate innovation. She's the best-selling author of Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, The Catalyst Guide to Working Well. There you go. Actually, hang on one second. I'm just going to switch the mirrors. Oh, yeah, there we go. So everybody can see the book
Thank
the
you.
right way around. Yes, absolutely. So I would encourage you, the book after this, you'll see everything will be below this video, and I encourage you to check it out. And it's the Catalyst Guide to Working Well. And this is what we're going to talk about today is change agents and catalysts, and just a little bit of baseline for this, Shannon. Like what sparked your passion for empowering change agents, both in startups and in larger organizations?
The trauma of personal lived experience. The story starts when I was at Vodafone and had the great fortune to build out their enterprise innovation program from scratch. And our thesis was always, we knew there were these positive troublemakers, as we were talking about, around the world. But there was sort of the reinvention of the world in Africa and India and Turkey and Europe. And we're like, what if we just created a network of these people, gave them a shared language, framework, structure, removed barriers for them? And it was massively successful. We called it the Innovation Champion Program. And from a sales perspective, they were really out in front, creating really strategic relationships with some of the world's largest customers. But like 3 years in, while we were wildly successful, tens of millions of in-year revenue, hundreds of millions in pipeline, new products to market, all the things that an innovation team is supposed to do. And I was burning out. And I was burning out because not all of the innovation champions were showing up the same way. So I kept trying to make the application harder or do more training or whatever. And the CEO loved us because we were doing great things. So it wasn't a lack of resources that a lot of innovation programs, struggle with. And I couldn't find the dial that would sort of ignite this other part of this change agent population. And so long story short, I got an executive coach who's now my co-CEO. She used her skills at Microsoft leading innovation. And when she set up her own agency, she's like, there's these customers that I love working with. There's not a psychographic or demographic that describes them. So she did what she does best. And she did a research study of them. And happily, I was one of the clients. And then she shared this foundational research about people that we call catalysts. And from that moment on, I was like, those are the people that I want to support in the world, the accelerators of positive transformation. But it's not easy in a small startup or in a large organization. You are the lightning rod for the resistance against change. So the title of the book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, is our default position is catalyst. It's not what we're advocating for. So the whole book then becomes the guide to working well.
So what are some of the traits and characteristics of a change agent, a real catalyst, and what's the difference between them and just somebody who's just destructive, right? Or just, I mean, because sometimes, as you know, we're better than I. Sometimes these people can sort of show up initially as change agents, but then they literally just turn into very divisive forces.
Yeah. It's an important question. So I'll start with, and I want to make the distinction for our conversation between catalysts that we support and change agents, because it's an important distinction. And I'll say, from the catalyst perspective, it's not a choice. And that's a very important distinction. So once someone comes in contact with the concept of catalyst, like myself, I can sort of backcast and be like, I started the recycling program in high school. I became senior class president in college to fix a problem. So it's just a way of being, of moving through. Right. Catalysts are, they're constant scanners and dot connectors. We're always like interested in the next fast thing that's coming out. We start to distill from that visions of systems that could be better in front of us, whether that's the line at Starbucks or your strategy execution in your large multinational, right? We're like, this is how I could make this thing better. The important thing is, like, if we stopped there, they'd be visionaries, but there's this drive towards action that defines us. And so that's an important distinction. I'll come back to that. We have an experimentation mindset because almost by definition, we're doing something net new. Even if we had the same playbook in a different company or industry, it's new where we're doing it, right? And the final piece is that people will describe us as being comfortable with risk or ambiguity. Right. usually when you ask a catalyst about their relationship with risk, it'll be like, it's risky not to do the thing that I'm suggesting. They're not always like super risk takers. And there's also a scale. Like I'm a super adrenaline junkie and Tracy likes data. So we have different relationships with risk. But if I go back to the other part of your question, which is like, so what separates the catalyst from the change agents from the disruptors? And this was true for me, which is why Tracy's research was so, so impactful to my life. I was like, oh God, they don't want change. Like that was the first, I was like, they just want it. They don't know how to do it, or they will want it. I just have to convince them. But so what happens is if you are a catalyst and you don't have the self-awareness and you don't have the empathy and compassion and understanding of those around you, and you're like, but I'm moving fast in service of making us better. What happens is we leave carnage and wreckage behind us because we don't slow down to bring everyone along on the journey, or to sort of suss out, like, is the kind of change that I want within the appetite of the organization. And so a lot of disruptors, and we tried to find the positive disruptors, the positive troublemakers, right? And then change agents is this broader group of people who can lean into all of the stuff that catalysts would do, but when they go home at night, it's not like their partner's like, whoa, slow down, right? So a catalyst is a catalyst no matter what part of your life you're going through.
No, and thank you. That's a very, very interesting definition and difference. It's so. Here's the thing is, having been through many, shall I say, as my own career, I would probably say I've been a change agent, and it's not always welcomed, right? I mean, as you know, it's in fact, the resistance is always, it can be kind of visceral at times. Why is it, guys? Why do people struggle so much with change agents? Why do they struggle so much with the concept of change when nothing in our lives stays constant?
Yeah, I want to respond to the first thing that you said first, which is it's so true. The organizations often treat us like we are a virus and will attack us like that, right? Even when, and if you ask a catalyst, they are so desperately in service of making everything better around them. And so that leads sort of to the second part of your question, which is, it really does come down to this like foundational relationship with change. And we all have them for different reasons. And in fact, a piece of our research that we'd like to do at some point is it a nature or nurture, or some kind of, some combination, both for the catalyst, but also for the resistors. Like, why might someone be a resistor? Historically, we've really, we are not advocates of creating an entire leadership team of catalysts. That would be a disaster. You probably don't really want a catalyst CFO, right? I mean, there's some places in the organization where, homogeneity and stability are actually really important to an organization. But you hit on an important point, which was like before the pandemic and way back when I was at Vodafone, I was, introducing people probably for the first time, quite honestly, to the concept of VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? The post-pandemic, we don't have to convince people about change. But we still have to recognize that half of the population on the standard distribution of the change curve hasn't really changed their relationship with change. And so what we teach catalysts to do is to, first, there's the self-awareness and the slowing down and the skills, but there's also like, what is the best idea that I can get through the system, not the one that I think will be the best in the whole world, the most ideal.
Right.
Because they do have to deal with that second half. But I will say, increasingly, as we work with chief people officers and, working across organizations to accelerate transformation, increasingly, we used to be able to say, well, that being on the laggard side isn't a problem. And I just don't think that's true anymore. So I think that cultures are moving a little bit. They have to move more in the change acceptance direction. And so people are going to have to do a long, hard look in the mirror about like what they can possibly change about themselves to stay part of something that's current and relevant that the organization is going to be embracing.
Yeah, and you mentioned like self-awareness and all of that stuff. I mean, self-awareness for for the change agent, but self-awareness for people in general. I feel like self-awareness, and it's something that I wish I had understood much earlier in my life. But hey, there's a thousand things.
We did it, John.
Yeah, exactly. We did it, but I mean, but it's the one thing that I feel holds back people from being their best, having their best career, having their best life. All of that is just this lack of self-awareness.
Amen. I totally agree. And the good news is it's a totally learnable skill. You have to be willing. And if there's trauma in your background, it may be hard.
Yeah.
because the self-awareness is about bringing all of the parts of you into the room to look at and explore and change as you want. We often teach emotional intelligence in organizations, not just to Catalyst, but across the organization, because you need to have that self-awareness first as you're going to do anything in the organization. So self-awareness, self-regulation, awareness of others, and then being able to sort of regulate the group. And those are critical skills. And they're more important now than ever, because you have to have this, like, is this getting me triggered? Am I getting charged? Is it too much for me? Because if it's too much for me and they have a different relationship with change, it's an interesting insight to bring to the table and invite them to sense into what they're comfortable with. And then the final piece I'll say about that is there's tiny little exercises that you can bring into anything. We often have an arrival moment at the beginning of each training, even virtually. Hey, take 60 seconds, check in with yourself. What's one word that describes how you feel right now, right? Or do a little body scan. How are you feeling? Just to get the little muscles going about the self-awareness.
I think that's great, because the great thing about us as human beings is that our bodies will tell us, they'll send us signals, like both physically, physiologically, and stuff. So we know, like you said, check in. How are you feeling right now? If you do take that moment, you can go, actually, I feel a bit tense, or I feel a little uneasy, or I'm excited, or whatever it tends to be. So change agents, talk to me a little bit about a hidden change agents, and how they can gain visibility and influence to drive things. Because sometimes we think change agents are just like these, they're out there, and they're, everybody recognizes them, and they're charging around making changes. But some of the greatest change agents are, as you said, initially hidden in plain sight, if you like.
Yeah. When we first started the company, we were doing it as a side hustle, and we were doing retreats, and we would interview people. And it was also part of our research to make sure that we were, that they were catalysts. That's what we were curating. And people would have imposter syndrome, because they're like, well, I'm just creating change in my team. I'm not playing on a big global scale. When we work with organizations now to do like these transformation acceleration programs where we're helping them identify their catalyst, there's this one classic story, but it just represents the whole thing, where this woman was identified as a catalyst, and the leadership team was like, really? She's a catalyst? And then someone else on the team was like, well, that she runs 2 nonprofits outside of work. And also, by the way, she's written a book, but she had just been told her whole career to like, be quieter, not too fast, all of the things. And so these hidden change agents who are capable of so much energy and power for the organizations will focus it elsewhere, or find another place where they can be unleashed if the organizations aren't capable or interested of identifying them and engaging them.
Yeah. So how can companies better identify and help these people? Because let's face it, the resistors to change oftentimes are very good at it, and they're very, and they are out there, and they often are sometimes and often in positions of authority and stuff. So they're easily identifiable, but they're very powerful. And then you have these change agents who have to kind of go up against that, if you like.
So repeat the question in that one.
I said, how can companies start to help
How
people
can
like
I
that,
find them?
so that they can actually they can actually bring the change, or help drive that change when you do have, entrenched resistors in your organization?
Yeah. Obviously, like, we have the IP that helps, but there's a lot of things, other assessments that will get
Mm,
you close to being identified these change agents. You have to have someone or some people at the C-suite who are interested in this. That's just the answer. It's really sad, but it's like you can make very incremental change with the bottom up sort of groundswell, but sort of anecdotally, there's more burnout, there's less satisfaction, the people are more likely to eject from the business. And so we often work with catalysts themselves to say, is this the right match for you? Because if you want to do big disruptive things and it's not invited, then it's not going to be a great match. And I was a single mom. I did that for years because it was just like I could do my day job. I served on multiple boards of nonprofits. I did search and rescue. I was a mom. Like, I just took all my catalytic energy outside the
right.
business, right? And it was like, it was fine. That's okay. But we have to help catalysts understand the trade-offs that they're willing to make. And I would say and we see this more and more too, leadership teams are shaking up. Like, if you are a resistor to change and you're in the C-suite, you are not going to last very long.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, I totally agree with you. But it's an interesting point as well about if you're a change agent or whatever, that maybe the organization you're in right now is not the right place to be a change agent. I've experienced that myself. I've tried and tried to drive a lot of change, and literally at some point realized this is a futile exercise. It's
Yeah,
not going to happen here.
yeah.
Uh, but I think that's a really good thing, because there's probably nothing worse than a change agent staying in a place where they're never going to make an impact.
Well, and you mentioned before how our body tells us like when
Mhm,
we're hitting that resistance. And that's so the burnout part is the last part of the title
mhm.
of the book. And that's what happens. Even in the best of circumstances as catalysts, we just get so excited about the thing that we're trying to give birth to in the world that we will drive ourselves off a cliff. And so, but if you're in a place where there's higher resistance, obviously that just happens probably with more frequency and higher amplitude. And so
Mhm.
you go back to the self-awareness part and you're like, what is my body telling me now?
Yeah.
Like I'm co-CEO with Tracy and I still have burnout. So it's not a systems thing. We both know we wrote the book, but it's like, how do you develop the awareness to be like, you know what? I've ordered dinner 3 nights out of 5 nights this week. That's one of my tells. I've
Wow.
started dropping things because I'm super uncentered. And
Mm.
Tracy will be like, well, why don't you go take an afternoon off? And I'll be like, that's a really good idea. So
Yeah.
however you can sense and carve out the time for yourself, those little oxygen mask breaks can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I feel this, and tell me, and it's slightly off topic, but tell me if you agree with this. I feel like we are starting to see a change, because one of the things I experienced when I moved from Ireland to the US and corporate America was, how we celebrate stress. We celebrate, always being on. We celebrate this idea that we're so indispensable that if we take a day off, the world's going to collapse. The company, they can do without us. And I feel finally that maybe we're starting to see a little change in that, because frankly, that's exhausting and it's not that productive.
You had two great guests, Justin Long and Rick Colton,
Yeah.
who both were talking about that. So I think it's really important that it's like it's getting normalized, right? This
Mhm.
isn't something that is like exotic like it was when I was
Yeah.
building up the innovation program and bringing mindfulness into blue collar plants,
Mhm.
etc. But I think it's important that we keep talking about it because the pace of change is happening so fast and so intensely that if we don't sort of keep it top of mind, it's easy to let it go. And we're hearing still everyone talk about doing more with less, and
Mhm.
that is going to lead to burnout. That's the only way that that ends. And I will call out, and you probably know it, Ariana Huffington's note to Elon Musk when she was like, burning through the people and not getting sleep is not a sustainable leadership style. Like just
Mhm.
stop.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think that there are some, there's some changes coming out there, but at the same time, as you said, it's really important. Like, things are changing so fast, the world is changing. We're moving kind of at light speed, and it's really now showing up the organizations that lack agility, right?
Yes,
So agility is something that a change agent kind of inherently has.
yes.
So if you want to really start to drive change in an organization, you have to start looking at how does the organization become more agile, which in itself is a challenge.
It is a challenge. And that's why the call is find the people who have the best relationship with change first, give them the skills to start bringing like them the early adopters, because then you get to this tipping point.
Mhm.
Right. And it's like the speed by which you can get Catalyst to, embrace your agile or whatever type of sort of transformation methodology that you want to adopt is really fast. And so you don't have to do it all yourself as a leadership team, and you get to that tipping point much, much faster.
Yeah, but I think that's a great point, because sometimes we do feel like we want to do everything at once, because we're kind of bad, to be honest. I mean, this is something I think everybody struggles with. We're bad at focus, and we're bad at choosing things, right?
Yes.
Because we hate choosing things, because when we choose something, we by default unchoose other things, and we hate, like, narrowing our options.
100%. One of the biggest things that we're working on with our customers on right now is saying no and prioritization.
Mhm.
So it's like either it's not right now, no, or it's just no. But it's funny because like this one company, the C-suite basically gave the VPs like an opportunity to come back and say, "This, tell us what you don't want to do," and it was really, really hard. Because it's like the stuff that they've been working on for a couple of years. I
Mm.
get it; it's their baby, right? You take that guy's stuff and stop that thing over there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
hard,
I always used to say to people who worked for me, I was always say, listen, I'm just going to tell you in advance, don't get married to your projects,
totally.
because because the day could come. And I said, this is going to be a difficult day. But the day could come. You've been working on something for 6 months, and I walk into your office and say, drop that. We're doing something else. And you're going to have to be able to deal with that.
It's really, really good advice. How did they take it?
People took it well when you give them that advice. Now it's a little different when you do it. Some people remember that, and some people are able to do it. Some people, it's almost like they go through almost a grieving process,
Which is fair. And
Yeah.
we talk about that in our class. Like, change is going through grief cycles, full stop.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? Like, in all the different ways. And so I love that you normalized it ahead of time, because we always talk about expectation setting. People, regardless of where they are in the change curve, do better with change when you've set an expectation with them.
Yeah. I also used to say is, in your job description, I would say, the most important sentence on that is, and anything else anything else that may be needed.
Totally.
I said, because who knows? Who knows the future? Who knows how your job is going to evolve over time? But I think I think this is such a great time for change agents. And I think also the other part too is, I think, because of the changes in the way we work, how companies are structured, they're hybrid, virtual, they're this, all of that, that actually the quieter, more thoughtful people, this is the best time for them, because they can make an impact in maybe a way they couldn't once upon a time, when everything was concentrated in big offices and big personalities tend to win out every time.
It is really interesting, people's relationship with the different types of working right now, but also I think you're hitting on something important, which is, in the frenzy of all of the change, there can be this like overwhelming feeling that you have to decide or react right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we know scientifically that our brains, like the default mode network, our brains actually do better problem solving when you don't just sit in the office and try and solve it like that. Like, you go for a walk, or you take the contemplative time. And that's true for extroverts and introverts, catalysts and non-catalysts. Like, the brain science is behind that. And we need more of that. So I think organizations should be thinking. One company we worked with, Flow, was one of the programs that they were working on, because they recognized, like, if you have meetings from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're supposed to fit your work between 4 and whenever you go to bed, not super sustainable. So how do you create an environment where flow is actually built into the thinking of the structure of the organization?
Yeah, no, I love that, because I'll give you a funny example. Is way back when I in Dublin, when I started with the startup that actually ended up moving me to the US. In our first building, we had one meeting room, right? One meeting room, and there was about 30 or so of us. So there was, you went to a meeting once a week, or it wasn't very often, right? We then expanded. We were 60, 100 people. We moved into a building that we had multiple floors. We had meeting rooms everywhere. What do you think happened?
More meetings took place, of course. Fill up the
Absolutely.
space. Yes.
Everybody went meeting mad. And it's funny. And did it get more done? No. Did it do exactly what you think? All you would see is people like this in the old days, rushing from one meeting to another with their papers in their hands.
It's really true. I've been a big advocate of paying attention to space for all of the different parts of the business process. I will say the Vodafone office in Amsterdam was one of the best spaces that I've ever seen, because they really thought about all of the different modalities that people need to sort of embody at work. So they'd have small breakout things. They would have train spaces where you're listening to other conversations. They'd have a cafe. They had stand-up meeting rooms, so the meetings wouldn't take as long, right? I mean, so they really thought intentionally. And Steelcase, we took our Catalyst executive network to Steelcase, because they're thinking about it really deeply too. And I think, like, the burnout plus if you think about burnout plus the demands that are made on people, thinking really intentionally about space is going to play a significant role in driving outcomes. And finally, I'll just say 2 other hacks. When we work with customers, we're like, you need to feel free to say no to meetings. Like, I mean, we have to work with leadership team, but it's like, give me the agenda and tell me what I'm doing, because I don't want to waste your time or my time. And also start it 10 minutes late, so that people get the bio break, so you can do the context switching just slightly better.
Those are good suggestions. The other thing I would say is, don't let your calendar dictate how long the meeting is. Just because it defaults to an hour or to a half hour, if you only need 10 minutes, have a 10-minute meeting. How often have you had a half-hour meeting that you really only needed 5 minutes?
Totally. All the time, which is also why the starting early helps. Because if you say you're going to give 10 minutes back at the end, you'll never get it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, this has been absolutely fascinating, Shannon. I love interviews like this when there's so much, so much value, in it. So All of Shannon's information is going to be below this video, but obviously before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yeah, we work with organizations to accelerate transformation by helping them identify and activate their catalysts. And I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Well, I would encourage you. This is the time. This is probably this is the greatest time of change, and it's the greatest opportunity for people who have ideas. It's the greatest opportunity for people who want to drive this change, who want to be agile, who want to kind of embrace it. So, yeah, I would encourage you to go out, check out the work that Shannon and her partner do. So,
Thank
thanks
you.
again, Shannon. Thank you for watching. What's that?
Thanks for the lovely conversation.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. And thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.